As we are forced once more to imagine Donald Trump as the Republican nominee, it feels like we are barreling into banana republic territory all over again. Then there are the days that remind us that we are indeed a democracy, and today is one of those days. A federal appeals court ruled that Trump has no immunity from prosecution in the 2020 election interference case, meaning a man who seemingly acted like he was above the law was just told that he is in fact not, and that he is indeed a citizen just like the rest of us. Andrew Weissman is back with me, and joining us now is Tim O'Brien, senior executive editor of Bloomberg Opinion and a biographer of Donald Trump. How's he going to react to that? How much is he going to melt down, Tim?
Oh, I think he privately will melt down tons. Publicly, he will act out according to the playbook. He's acted out all along. He'll say he's being unfairly persecuted, that it's a witch hunt, that it's overreach. But the reality is he knows he's never actually confronted the kind of legal artillery and prosecutorial force that's lined up on his doorstep now. You know, the only time he faced a federal prosecution prior to this morass that he's in now was when he and his father got investigated by the Justice Department.
By the Nixon Justice
for
Department.
Housing discrimination in the early 1970s. And it was a baby case, and they basically made it go away with a plea agreement. And never again. And he thumbed his nose at regulators, and he broke rules, and he ran around the borders of the law. But no one cared about him as much then either, because he was a cartoon figure and a real estate developer. He now has two very serious federal cases on his doorstep, and he's got a very meaty state prosecution for voting fraud in Georgia, and then two cases in New York State. And he's just not prepared to deal with any of it. He's never attracted top legal talent to represent him. He doesn't know how to conduct himself when evidence is being stacked up against him publicly. All he knows how to do is try to test the merits of the case in public, and that works against him in a situation like this. I think the only thing that saves him from this is the clock, and that's a very real problem. I think there's a real problem that this goes beyond the presidential election in November. If he wins, I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to try to get both of the federal cases dismissed, of course, right? But he's also, you know, he doesn't have many skills. He's unsophisticated and he's ignorant. But he is a profound survivor, and he survived a lot of things most people couldn't get past. And I think what he does to do that is he creates a reality bubble around himself. And he says, I'm a victim, I'm going to fight back with me. And I think one of the dangers as this progresses, and if the wheels of justice continue to turn against him, I think he will incite and incent people to come out onto the street, because he's going to feel cornered. And this ruling today, I think it's devastating. And it's not unprecedented in the sense of the courts telling him he's not above the rule of law. You know, I think the Trump versus Vance ruling, where Cy Vance was trying to get his business records, and Trump's lawyer said it's prosecutorial overreach. They're not entitled to get their hands on any of this. Roberts invoked the same argument that's in this appellate court briefing in a different way, citing different precedent. But the conclusion at the end of his ruling is no one is above the rule of law, including the president of the United States. He's heard that before. It's the stakes are getting higher and higher each time.
And I mean, and the thing is, we're talking about this a little bit break. I'm going to try to bring it on to TV. Is that we were a lot of even Neil Katyal was like he was in freak out mode, and it's like if Neil Katyal's in freak out mode, then I'm in freak out mode. Like I'm in freak out mode.
I can't imagine him in freak out mode.
I can't either. It's probably like basically the same, except he's saying I'm in freak out mode, right? I can't imagine you in freak out mode. But I mean, but the thing is that the delay was not on them. The fact that this case took so long, Andrew, former prosecutor, is actually an American scandal.
So I think there are a couple things. One, the normal legal time frame is not really built for this process, right? I mean, in other words, there's sort of two different time frames, and Donald Trump is taking advantage of that. So part of a normal delay has to be just due process of law. A defendant is entitled to time to prepare, to make motions. And that was part of what Judge Chutkan did when she had the case that began in August, that she said, you know what, we can do this case in March. To your point, though, we're not talking about the appellate court. We can quibble over, okay, maybe you should have decided a week before or 2 weeks ago. But that's nothing compared to the issue of what about the time frame of the Department of Justice seeing the January 6th insurrection and not really taking real action until, frankly, Jack Smith was put on the job and got things moving.
Yeah.
And so that is the time frame that sort of led to the problem we're having, where I remember saying we have a clock problem.
That's
Everyone
right.
keep their eye on the clock.
Yeah.
And that is what we're doing now. But today, just to where we are, it's a good day.
Yes.
Yes, next week we will probably learn more, because the Supreme Court, if it denies the cert petition, if it says I'm not taking this, it is green light to Judge Chutkan, and it is clear that there
and that's like a 6-week case. How long is that case?
6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
It will happen.
Yeah.
There will be a judgment. Whether it is, this is where I'm an institutionalist, whether it is a conviction or not.
That's right.
And you know what? That jury has to find each of these things beyond a reasonable doubt. Yep. That is the government's burden.
Yes.
And the defense doesn't have to do anything.
It's why he's Citizen Trump.
Exactly.
Can you have ever imagined, in all of the years of you covering Donald Trump and in being in Los Angeles Donald Trump, that Donald Trump, an unremarkable businessman who inherited $317 million and then lost $900 million, got a job with NBC, got a W-2 from the same place I get a W-2 from, which is the only time he paid taxes and probably the most money he ever made. Terrible guy a terrible businessman who couldn't even make casinos work in Atlantic City.
Yeah.
Could you have imagined that guy, number one, would be president of the United States, but also would be the guy whose name is going to be on the cases that determine whether Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution is enforceable, whether the emoluments clause is real, and whether a president has total immunity from criminal prosecution? Could you imagine that being Donald Trump?
I always have this thought of the knee-jerk response anytime is, can you imagine connected to Donald Trump? The answer is always yes, because he will go to any lengths to do what any rodeo clown might do. But of course not. In this case, could I have imagined Donald Trump to be president? I didn't think he was going to get elected in 2016. I was profoundly wrong. I didn't think that, but I think the revelation about Donald Trump isn't so much about Donald Trump. It's about voters.
It's about us.
It's about us. It's about the dynamics. And
if
there's any virtue to the Trump era, it's that he's ripped this Band-Aid off ideas we've had about progress around racial equity, social equity, the rule of law. And he's forcing us now to actually stand up for these things, not to sort of ride along with the argument that a rising tide lifts all boats, that a strong economy wedded to a strong democracy ultimately lands in the right place, because he is ripping apart the foundations of civil society and civil discourse. So no, I never imagined he could be president, because I thought about the presidency as an office that attracted miscreants from time to time, or egotists or flawed people, but wasn't a place that would house someone ultimately who had dictatorial aspirations and who is flagrantly illicit day in and day out. And now he's a historical figure.
He absolutely is. He's going into the history books in the worst way. But thank God we still have enough institutions left standing that they can actually put the rule of law back on the table. Andrew Weissmann, Tim O'Brien, thank you both. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.